What's up, everyone, and welcome back to our MLB 2018 preview. It's Preston here. I'm joined by Josh again, and today we're going to cover the AL and NL East. Let's get into it.
All right, so as you know, the order goes from the team with the worst record last year and moving on up. And we're starting with the Baltimore Orioles. This team is kind of interesting. They still have Manny Machado. They have Scope and Trumbo still hanging around, and Jones out in center field. The rest of the team, though, I really don't know how this team performs this year. They have guys who can play well. They have guys who may surprise you at some point this year. One guy that I've liked throughout his career was Beckham. I think he could do something for them. And they have Darren O'Day coming out of the bullpen, who is a solid guy as well. But, Preston, what do you think about this team? I mean, they're just kind of in a slump, I guess.
Yeah, this is kind of a mediocre team at this point, and it's going to be an interesting season with this being Manny Machado's last season, most likely in Baltimore. I don't think that Manny Machado is going to re-sign with the team, and I also think that this is going to be really interesting that they're going to let him play shortstop this year. Manny Machado he's going to be fine at shortstop. I mean, I'll just say that. He's going to be fine defensively at shortstop, but he's elite defensively at third base. He's probably the best defensive third baseman, and I just don't like the idea of helping him, basically just helping his value on the market, personally, because I think that it doesn't help the Orioles to put him at shortstop. I think he's much better served at third base for them, and I think that Tim Beckham was fine at shortstop last year. I think that he's definitely not Manny Machado, but I think that he's going to be worse at third base than he was playing at shortstop. Yeah. So I think that you're better off having Machado at third and having Beckham at short than the opposite. And so to me, it almost seems like the Orioles are doing this as like a last gasp, maybe to get Manny to re-sign with them. But that's kind of what they have to hope for, right? Because this team is pretty mediocre. They have a good offense. Trey Mancini had a big breakout year last year and put up big numbers. They still have Chris Davis. They still have Tim Beckham, as we mentioned, and still have Adam Jones. So they have a solid offensive group, as do pretty much every team in the AL East. But the problem with the Orioles is that they have no pitching.
Right.
And they tried to address that by signing Andrew Cashner, who had a big bounce-back season with the Rangers last year. But Andrew Cashner is not someone that can be trusted to go to the top of your staff and take over. And Kevin Gausman, as good as he is, he can be pretty inconsistent himself. And then with Dylan Bundy, you're always wondering about health. And Chris Tillman just isn't really that good. So when I look at the rotation for this team, it's pretty disappointing. And I just don't see them taking that step, especially in a division like this, which is so top heavy. I just don't see them taking that step to reach that winning level. And I expect them to be a pretty mediocre team again this year.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. And, you know, I can't see any team really challenging the Yankees or the Red Sox in this division. And a team that would have done that a few years ago would have been the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays have been there. They've done that. They've never made it to the top, but they've made some big splashes in the past. And they really have a solid core to build from, but I'm not sure if this aging core is the one to really do it in this division. I mean, the Yankees are building up. The Red Sox are building up. It's an arms race in the AL East. And it's crazy. And, you know, Josh Donaldson next to Troy Tulowitzki is pretty scary. And if they could have a great season, that'd really be huge for the Blue Jays. But the Blue Jays need a lot more help than just two good guys out on third and shortstop.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Donaldson, another guy that's in the last year of his contract. So this is interesting. You got two teams in the AL East that are kind of like floundering around, hoping that they can keep their superstar, but it's not looking likely. And I don't think that it's going to happen for the Blue Jays either. This is pretty much their last year to go for it, and they're already off to a rocky start. Mm-hmm. Just recently, Marcus Stroman experienced some shoulder soreness and pain, and now he's out, and they're monitoring him. And I'll just say now, if Stroman's out for any long period of time, this team is dead where they stand. Stroman is their ace. He's the guy that's supposed to take them to the next level. And even then, I'd still say I don't think that their pitching is good enough to handle the rest of the AL East. So the Blue Jays are in a really scary spot. I think that they had a really nice year from Justin Smoke, which they needed since they lost Edwin Encarnacion, and now they need a similar situation when they lose Jose Bautista, who isn't the Joey Bats that we knew from a couple years ago, so it's not that big of a loss. But now they bring in Randall Grichuk from the Cardinals in a trade, and Randall Grichuk is a guy that he's just kind of waiting to break out. His bat speed is elite across baseball. His exit velocity is elite across baseball, but he also is just a huge strikeout problem, and making contact is the biggest problem for him, which is unfortunate because when he does make contact, it usually turns out pretty well. So it's interesting, the Blue Jays, this position that they've kind of put themselves in. They're another one of those teams very similar to the Orioles, that they're very middling to where you expect them to almost just be like a team that plays spoiler this year. I expect them to be the team that tries to ruin another team's season. I'm not expecting the Blue Jays to compete. I think that Toronto fans will have a fun year of Josh Donaldson. He's obviously an elite player. They badly need Troy Tulowitzki to turn it around, but I think at this point he's past it. I think that his career is on the decline. So many injuries have probably caught up to him at this point. There's not much to say about this team, but they do have Kevin Pillar in center field, and I love his defense, and at least you get to see dazzling plays from him every night, because that's him and Donaldson are basically the reason to come to the ballpark at this point.
They could be a team that the Red Sox or Yankees end up struggling against, and one of them could really end up losing out on the East because of the Blue Jays, and there's a chance the Blue Jays find that out early on in the season playing these teams so often. I'm not sure they're really going to do much else besides that, though, and it's sad to see where they once were battling in the ALCS and dropping here. But the teams in the East that are at the top have just stacked up so much that it's too hard to even compete with that now.
Yeah, and they signed small deals like Curtis Granderson and Jaime Garcia, and now Sung-Won Oh, the closer from the Cardinals. And these are kind of deals that, I guess when you're looking at this from a GM's perspective, they're just kind of trying to hope that these things pan out into something big. You know that your team's not at the peak level where you can go all in, and you know that your team's not awful. So they're kind of just like, maybe we can catch lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of moves that they made this offseason. But in the end, I don't think that that's going to be enough for them. And I would hope that they do catch lightning in a bottle, because it's always fun to see guys rebound in a big way. But it's just hard to rely on guys like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I guess that leaves us with our next team. We're moving on to the Rays. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rays fans. This team just doesn't look that good. I do like Chris Archer, though. I really like Chris Archer a lot, actually.
Yeah.
But the team really doesn't have the guys that are there. They have Echeverria, Denard Spans hanging out in left field, Wilson Ramos behind the dish, and I don't know if the Rays have enough to do much at all. They'll be battling for 4th or 5th with the Orioles, sadly. And, losing Souza and Longoria, the faces of the franchise, just walking out like that in trades, it sucks. And especially for Longoria, you and I talked earlier about this. Longoria was awesome back when they played that game at the end of the year and it all came down to them making the playoffs, and
what a memory.
They made it in, and Longoria was such a big part of that, and to see him leave really hurts for the fans that are there. I don't know, it's interesting to see what this team could be capable of. There's a chance that maybe a young guy comes and has a breakout year for them, but I don't expect much else.
Yeah, this Rays team, it's rough to see them break it apart again. That's what they're in. They're in another rebuild. This team is not going to be competitive this year. They can try to fill it in with stopgaps like they have. I mean, they just recently signed Carlos Gomez, and Gomez put up a decent season for the Rangers last year, but it's not something that can be relied on with him in a 1-year deal. They're in a really tough spot that they don't get a lot of fans to the ballpark as it is, and now they don't have Mr. Ray. They don't have Evan Longoria, and I think a lot of Rays fans would say that he is the greatest Ray in their history. I mean, he was the face of the franchise, not just in a time period, like this generation. He's the face of the franchise of the Tampa Bay Rays. So it's rough to lose him. And even though it's a lesser name, their top prospect, Brent Honeywell, who's supposed to come in and be that guy that competes with Chris Archer for the ace spot, he just had Tommy John. And like if things couldn't get worse for the Rays, that happens. They experience that. At this point, it's time to blow it up even more, Tampa. I mean, you can't just trade Longoria, who's an aging star, and Souza for these parts, which you got some good pieces for him, but not like elite prospects. It's time to trade Chris Archer. It's time to trade Alex Colomé. It's time to trade Kevin Kiermaier. Get rid of the pieces that you have that are still really valuable to other teams and build that farm system up, because we know that the Rays can do it. We've seen them build up a competitive team. This year is going to be a poor year in Tampa Bay, and I just think it would be better off to start getting the future ready now, because I don't think that keeping Chris Archer and Alex Colomé and Kevin Kiermaier, that I don't think they're going to be around for that next Rays group that comes up and competes. So personally, I think the Rays will be battling, in the back of the division again, and it's going to be a pretty poor year. As an Angels fan, though, I hope that C.J. Cron has a solid year for him. I like C.J. Cron, and he's going to get full playing time, obviously. Oh, yeah. So this is the year for C.J. to break out, which he could. But other than that, I'm just not too optimistic on Tampa Bay.
No, and it's sad, like you said, and I definitely agree with trading Chris Archer. He deserves better than hanging around on a team that's going to end up at the bottom or fourth, and he could really go and help a team that's playoff bound and really bolster their lineup, and it would be huge to have that in the rotation, and I'm sure plenty of teams would be willing to give up some good prospects for him.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, with that, though, I mean, I don't know if there's much else that they can do. They have to jump in, start the rebuild.
Yeah, I agree. But moving on to a team that has no thoughts at all about a rebuild, we go to the New York Yankees. And the Yankees are the Yankees. The Yankees are the talk of the offseason. The Yankees got Giancarlo Stanton. Wow. There's not much to be said about that other than wow, because this lineup it's Murderer's Row recreated. This is terrifying for every single pitcher that steps on the mound. I don't know where to start, because even the players that are superstars, you also have players that came out of nowhere, which, I mean, I said this for the Dodgers, I've said it for the Cubs, now I'm saying it for the Yankees. Why do you guys, this is just good management, because why do you guys get this luck? How does Aaron Hicks come over to the Yankees and become an amazing player directly afterwards? And Didi Gregorius, realizes his potential immediately once he goes to the Yankees. This team is terrifying. I mean, there's no way around it. That batting order: Judge, Stanton, Sanchez, Bird, Gregorius. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Hicks. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting Brandon Drury, who they just traded for. I mean, this Yankees team is terrifying. This lineup is going to set records, I think.
Oh, easily.
And I just don't see how this is fair for everyone else. This lineup is going to be so terrifying. But I will say, as a baseball fan, I am so excited to see this. I mean, it's always fun to just watch good baseball. And I'm excited to watch these guys make ballparks look like, my backyard. Just little, tiny Little League stadiums. I mean, it's absolutely insane what this team is capable of. But it's not just their lineup. They still have a great rotation. Luis Severino took that step to be the ace that they needed. Yep. They still have Masahiro Tanaka. They traded for Sonny Gray. CC Sabathia had a big rebound year last year that no one really saw coming, and then he re-signed with them. And then they also have Jordan Montgomery and that number 5 spot, which they'll have a competition for that number 5 spot. But this Yankees team is terrifying. They still have an even more elite bullpen that they added to last year. They have Chapman, they have Betances, they have David Robertson and Tommy Canley, who they acquired from the White Sox. I mean, there's no weakness on this Yankees team. They're going to be very, very good again. And the evil empire is back, baby. I mean, there's no way around it.
Oh, they're back, and they're here to stay. This team is stacked, absolutely stacked. It is unreal to see them go out and get Stanton. This team was expected to slowly start making the playoffs. They put themselves in full playoff contention. They are all there. They got there early. They showed it last year. And Stanton, I'm calling it now. I know you think I'm crazy, Preston. 70 home runs, small ballpark. Mark my words. I know it's insane.
70.
Absolutely insane. But 70 home runs. Stanton is a monster, and he is going to feed off this loud crowd in New York and just hammer home runs night after night at home. On the road, he'll still do it. He hits home runs anywhere he goes. You give him a 600-foot field, he'll find a way to do it. But even besides him, you have Sanchez, who could easily hit 40 home runs. And then you have the rest of the team with Aaron Judge. I mean, this is insane to watch how many home runs are going to be off the bat. And literally every night, the highlight reels are going to be home runs out in New York. Like crazy. And one guy to not sleep on that I wouldn't say he's underrated, but Betances is awesome. And I really expect him to have another great year. He is doing a really great job for the Yankees. And the rotation that you talked about already is phenomenal. I mean, Severino, Tanaka, Gray, Sabathia is still pitching great ball. This team is built to win it all, and I think they really have a legitimate shot at that.
And you know what's terrifying is that another team that's management has done it so right where they can go out and spend tons of money and make big trades, but then they also still have so many good prospects. And that includes one of the premier talents in baseball, Gleyber Torres, who can play second, he could play shortstop, he could play around the diamond. And so for them acquiring someone like Brandon Drury, I think that this is being overlooked because Drury was a solid player for the D-backs, and he has solid potential to break out even more. And Drury can play second and third because they also have another prospect, Miguel Andujar, who's a third base prospect, who's another elite prospect that can step up and play for the big league team. They have Clint Frazier in the outfield. This team is so well stocked to if someone goes down, they can bring up an elite prospect that every team in baseball would want and immediately plug him in. Yep. And so right now they have a competition going on for the second or third base job because Drury can fit in one of those spots and then either Torres or Andujar can take the other spot, and then you still have the guy to call up later on. This Yankees team is so spoiled for riches. I mean, it's ridiculous. And like I said, the evil empire is back, and believe it, this is going to be the most hated team in baseball for sure. I mean, every team in the AL doesn't look forward to facing this team, and I can already imagine the faces that Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton will be giving each other as they try to top each other's 600-foot homers that they're hitting in that little bandbox in New York. I mean, it's just absolutely insane what's going to happen. I feel like I've said insane 50 times, but guess what? It's worth it. You can put a counter down in the comments. I don't even care. This team warrants all the hype that's being given to them. I will be shocked if they don't go a long way and if they don't set a ton of offensive records. And even with all the stuff that I've just said, I didn't even make the craziest prediction, y'all. Josh predicted 70 homers for Giancarlo Stanton. Are you kidding me? And it's not even that outrageous to think about. I mean, what an insane lineup, what an insane roster. And even more insane to think about to me is that it's not even guaranteed that they win their division because the team that they're chasing, the team that won the division, is the Boston Red Sox, and it's not like they were just going to sit back and relax during this offseason. The Red Sox, they went out and they do what the Red Sox do. They sign J.D. Martinez. It seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that they were going to sign J.D. Martinez because the moment the Yankees made their deal, everyone was like, okay, here come the Red Sox. They got to answer, right? And sure enough, they did. They got the premier power bat on the market in J.D. Martinez. And while there is a lot of questions about this medical that he took and 3 opt-outs got put into the contract, there's a lot of contract issues and questions outside of just a baseballing perspective. But from a pure baseballing perspective, J.D. Martinez makes this lineup so much better. And it's kind of surprising to me to look at this team last year that the Red Sox had and realize that they didn't really have a lot of power in their lineup, which I'm not accustomed to. You're accustomed to some big slugging Red Sox teams. Mm-hmm. So, of course, they adjust it in the only way that they can, and they go and get the best power hitter on the market. Yeah. The free agent market, I should say, not the trade market, Giancarlo Stanton. But I love this Red Sox team. Their rotation is elite, and that's a huge part of what they need facing offenses that they're going to face in the AL East. I think that Chris Sale has to put up another Cy Young-like season to even keep the Red Sox in this. but I very much think the Red Sox are in this. I think that Andrew Benintendi is a future star. I think that Mookie Betts had just not a Mookie Betts type season last year, but I would bet that he's going to have a Mookie Betts type season this year because even with last year's numbers, his defense is so elite that he still put up a solid WAR for the Red Sox, something well above average in the elite category. And I think that his bat will continue to make that jump. And then you've got people like Eduardo Nunez. I think that he's a really good person that they re-signed because Eduardo Nunez came in that utility role for him, and he really took over that lineup and transformed it in getting on base and being able to drive in runs. And I think that the way that they have the lineup constructed, they're going to set the table so well for JD Martinez that I fully anticipate him to put up numbers similar to his Diamondback stint. I don't think that it's possible to do what he did for a full season, but I do think that he's going to put up a monster year for the Red Sox, and it's going to be so important that they shut things down, not just from their starters, but they need specifically David Price to step up. David Price is the biggest question mark on this team because when David Price is on, David Price is elite. And when David Price is off, he like transforms that rotation and really hurts them. Not to the point where they could miss the playoffs, but to the point where they're gonna lose catching distance to the Yankees quick. Like the Red Sox have to match the Yankees position by position, I think, to win this division. And they don't. It's the AL East. They don't have a walkover in the division,
right,
like the AL Central, which we talked about last episode.
Yeah, the AL East is really going to come down to the Yankees and the Red Sox. Their rivalry is going to really be at another level this year, and it's going to be fun to watch for baseball fans, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
David Price is the guy I actually was going to hit on as well. David Price is a huge key to this team, but he has to do well. If he doesn't do well, it's going to show. This team needs David Price to step up, and they definitely, of all the years to use it, it's this year. The Yankees are there knocking on the door. I love the JD Martinez signing. I think he's going to have a great year there. I think it was a fantastic move for the Red Sox to make, and I think he fits in perfect with this team. The outfield is pretty solid out there too, with Benintendi, Betts, and Jackie Bradley Jr. I think they have a very, very solid team. And the one guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing playing is Rafael Devers. Devers was fun to watch last year. He's young, and I really, really hope to see him have another good year. Another guy I want to point out is Craig Kimbrell. He's an awesome guy to have at the back end of the bullpen, and I think he could be a key for this team locking down games against the Yankees later in the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we move on to the NL East now, and we'll start at the bottom like we usually do. We start with the Phillies, and this is an interesting team to me. I like the Phillies farm system. I think that the Phillies surprised a lot of people last year with some performances in the second half. They still had a bad year, but first person I have to talk about is Rhys Hoskins. What in the world? Where did this guy come from? How did he come in and just hit a homer every single at bat that I watched him and just take over this Phillies lineup? Rhys Hoskins, he kind of transformed the way I look at the Phillies now, because when you have that big power threat in the lineup, and then you've got someone like Odubel Herrera who can get on, Cesar Hernandez who continues to put up really good numbers at second base, and even though he's a big trade chip for a lot of people, the Phillies aren't letting him go. They know what a valuable player they have, and they know that their window just opened up because Aaron Nola is an ace, and they know that they can compete here in the very near future. I think that they're going to surprise some people this year. I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. I think that they're going to be another team that kind of tries to play spoiler. But there's a lot to like about this Phillies team. I like Jared Eichhoff. I like Vince Velasquez. I think that Jorge Alfaro is going to come in and step up at catcher. He's a prospect that we saw in the World Baseball Classic play really well, and I think that he's the type of leader that they need to come in and control this pitching staff. And then, like I said, they've got power in Hoskins. They signed Carlos Santana to come in and be that guy that can, take over the leadership role that they need in this lineup, because they don't really have that guy anymore. They're a young team, but they just have so many good young players. Michael Franco, J.P. Crawford. It's finally time for all these Phillies prospects that we've been hearing about to graduate into the big league club. and it's time for them to start surrounding them with talent, which they already did by signing Carlos Santana. Now, they're not going to be good, as I said, but they're just a couple years away, and so Philly fans have a lot to be excited about. I'll just say, stay away from Mike Trout, please. Please stay away from Trout.
Oh my goodness.
He's not going to Philadelphia. He's an Angel for life.
That's right. If you're an Angels fan, you better hope that. I don't see him leaving though, so that's a positive. With the Phillies, you're right though. They are a few years off, and I'm sure they have to know this by now that they're there. But the signing of Carlos Santana, for me, I thought it was, I don't know. It's great for them, but for Carlos Santana, I didn't think it was a great move because it's a 3-year contract, $60 million. That's great. You get the money. But Carlos Santana was on a team that was going to most likely, if they play well, win the AL Central. And now he's on a team that's looking at, what, 4th in the NL East? I mean,
yeah,
I think it's a questionable move for him, but he also has a chance to step up and be the guy in Philadelphia, and that could be huge for him moving forward. The rest of the team, I hope to see this Rhys Hoskins guy just rip it up. I mean, he was crushing the ball. He can pound the ball, and I mean, you could really expect a good year. He could really jump out and shock a lot of people. This team,
Rhys Hoskins had 18 home runs in 50 games.
Yeah, that's insane. Like, that's absolutely crazy.
That is nuts.
I mean,
that is nuts.
He's really got a chance to really jump out there and surprise a lot of people. And I think this team has a chance to make some moments where you're like, wow, they're like pretty solid. If they do a good job establishing themselves early on in the season, I think there's a chance that maybe they could do better than what I expect them to do, which is 4th, and, play spoiler, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're looking for. I think they're looking at spoiler. I think that they still could finish towards the bottom of the division and still spoil a team just because they have that young talent that's likely to spark for, a stretch at a time. I don't think that they'll stay consistent, but like I said, the young talent is there. So you know that they'll have some stretches where you're like, wow, this is what the Phillies could be in the future.
Yeah. So that leaves us moving over to the Mets, who have a brand new manager, Mickey Callaway, coming over from my favorite team, the Tribe. I like Mickey Callaway. I was very upset to see him go. He is a fantastic person. He's loved by the players, and he is very much about analytics. I think he's going to be a good manager. It did hurt my heart to hear him say that this is the best rotation he's ever worked with. But this rotation...
Controversy.
This rotation is fantastic. DeGrom and Syndergaard are both fantastic pitchers, and I really expect them to have just great seasons again. They are like 1-2 guys that could easily be a 1 anywhere they go. And them having Todd Frazier now is also great. I... Personally, having to face Todd Frazier when he was on the White Sox sucked, but Todd Frazier really is a solid ball player, and I think it was a good move to go out and get him. They have Adrian Gonzalez at first, Asdrubal Cabrera at second, Rosario at short, and, I think this team's great. And they got Jay Bruce, which he had a great year last year. I really think this team could challenge for first in the East if something happened on the Nationals, but I don't expect it. I think they'll end up in second, and they have a chance to really come in at a wild card spot if things play out.
Yeah, the Mets needed to make a big splash this offseason. They needed to supplement their team well, and I think that they did it. I don't think that Mets fans expected these kind of moves, but I actually think that they're smart in the moves that they made. I think that Todd Frazier was the most undervalued third baseman on the market. Todd Frazier isn't going to hit for average, but Todd Frazier is going to get on base. Todd Frazier is going to hit for power, and he also is a really, really good defender. So as an all-around ball player, Todd Frazier, I think, was a steal. He signed a 2-year, $17 million contract. I mean, that's a great deal for Todd Frazier, in my opinion, to take over that third base spot. I like bringing back Jay Bruce. He was solid for the Mets, and then he went over to Cleveland, and as you said, he really helped the Tribe down the stretch. So it's a smart move for the Mets to bring him back because the Mets are expecting to compete this year. They want to win the division. Obviously, every team wants to win the division, but realistically, they're competing for a wild card, and I think that they have as good a shot at anybody because of that rotation. Now, the Mets' problem the past couple of years has been health, rotation health, and it's hard to predict the future, but that's what they need this year. If DeGrom and Syndergaard and Matts are healthy, then those guys can carry the rotation. Matt Harvey is kind of a shell of himself
Yeah.
now. I think that any production you get from Matt Harvey that looks like the old Matt Harvey would be a huge shock that I don't think that they're counting on. I think that they pretty much know what Matt Harvey is at this point, but that doesn't matter when you have that front three that I talked about. And then they also signed Jason Vargas, which I think is underrated
Yep.
in the fact that Jason Vargas has put up some pretty solid numbers. He very much flies under the radar in his performances, and he's not someone you look at and go, oh, well, there's an ace, but he's definitely someone that taking the bump every 5 days, he's going to get the job done for you, and he's a nice solid addition to that rotation. I'm not sure about signing Adrian Gonzalez. It just I think that he's just past it.
Yeah,
He's
he
older. He's having injury problems. Like it scares me that he would go to an NL team where he's going to play first base still. I think that if Adrian wants to extend his career, he should have gone to an AL team where he can DH. But either way, they have a good young prospect out there in Dom Smith that can step in at first base when he's needed, which I think he will be needed this year. But I mean, I look at that team, and you still have Cespedes. He's still the key to that lineup, and I think that they have enough all around players to compete, and they'll stay in the wild card discussion.
Yeah. Well, it'll be an interesting season for the Mets, and I think their fans can expect a lot from this core. I definitely agree with the Adrian Gonzalez move. It is kind of a head scratcher for him late in his career to go to an NL team where he's going to have to work every day out in the field, and he really should be a DH somewhere. He's older, he can still hit, he could really be a help for an American League team, honestly. And it's a little odd, but I think they really do have a chance to go somewhere.
Okay, well, we move on to the next team, the Braves. The Atlanta Braves, they are building for the future. They're still in that rebuild that they started, and I know that a lot of Braves fans were hoping that they would compete, in the first year, their new ballpark when it opened, but I think that their patience is going to pay off. They have a really good young group coming up, but they need some of the guys that graduated to have good years. Like Dansby Swanson, he has to be that shortstop that we thought he was going to be, coming through the system, and in his first call-up, he looked so good. But last year took a step back. It's time for Dansby to regain that prospect status. I love Ozzie Albies. Obviously, Freddie Freeman is a superstar. Ender Inciarte has played amazing for them. Nick Markakis is still a solid veteran for them. So they have these pieces across the diamond where I think the Braves are going to be pretty good. I actually like how they look. But the reason to watch the Braves this year is Ronald Acuna. If Ronald Acuna gets called up, which I expect he does get called up at some point this season, Ronald Acuna is the number one guy prospect-wise in baseball. Now there's this debate because Ohtani is considered a prospect, but if we take Ohtani out of the conversation, Ronald Acuna is the number one prospect in baseball, and this guy is a legitimate superstar. He's a five-tool player. He's going to take over left field for the Braves, and I expect him to come out right out of the gate and do really well. And I'm not going to give any spoilers for the awards show, but there is an award that young players get that Ronald Acuna might be the favorite for in the National League. This Braves team is going to be interesting to watch because of that. I do like some pieces in their rotation, but I like the young pieces in their rotation. Tehran he's the ace. Fultonevich, we hope that Fulte, this is his year because I love his stuff. Fulte is amazing. Josh will tell you about Fulte here in a second. Wink, wink. Sean Newcomb, the Angels traded him in the Andrelton Simmons trade. Newcomb, as an Angels fan, I know that Newcomb has elite stuff. I know that he is a top-of-the-rotation starter if that stuff translates. He's always had walk problems. We'll see if that continues this year. But if he takes that next step, you have another top-of-the-rotation guy. Luis Gohara, who they acquired from the Mariners, another young player that can step in and be an elite player. Max Fried. I mean, this team, I love their young pitching so much, but young pitching is so inconsistent that it's hard to count on them. So the Braves are still a year or two away. But next year, if I'm the GM of the Braves, next year is when I start to supplement this team with big free agent signings to complement these younger guys coming up.
Yeah, I think this team really has a chance to play solid, they don't have a chance to challenge in the division, though. And they have good guys. I really think Dansby Swanson needs to step up after last year. And Dansby Swanson had a lot of hype around him, and he really can be that guy at shortstop for this team.
Yeah.
Freddie Freeman, like you said, is a star. I think he's going to have another great year. Their outfield's solid. They have Adams, Inciarte, and Markakis, but their rotation is what interests me. First off, I'm going to point out my friend Mike Fultonevich, I went to high school with them, is I'm really hoping he has a breakout year. But he is a guy to watch for. He can deal. He throws heat. And really, the one thing he's had to work on is his control. But he is a guy to watch for, and he has a chance to really have a breakout season. The rest of the rotation, though, with Tehran, who's a great pitcher, McCarthy, Newcomb, Gahara, I really think that it's going to be interesting to watch how it plays out because they do have other pitchers in there. I mean, they have Kazmir as well hanging out. And
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting thing to watch. That's probably the most interesting thing you'll see happen with the Braves this year is the rotation and who ends up making it and staying in it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But the rest of the team, I think they have a chance to do something in the division, but it's not going to be much. I mean, the team is really going to need to keep acquiring pieces in order to get there. But, Braves fans can hold on hope because I really think they have a chance, and it'd be nice to really see them get there.
Yeah, and they're definitely one of those teams that, while we're writing them off, they're one of those teams that they have enough young pieces that if they put it together for 1 year, they can be the Twins of last year. They could be a team that sneaks into the wild card, especially with that pitching talent. I mean, it's not every guy, like I said, is almost a repeat of themselves. Fulte, Newcomb, Gohara, these guys are all elite arms that struggle with command. So if anything, that Braves rotation is going to be amazing to watch just because you're seeing filthy stuff night in and night out. And, eventually these guys are going to put it together. I don't think that they're all going to bust. I certainly think that Fulte, with his experience, this is his year to really show himself as the star that I think he could be with his velocity and his off-speed stuff. I like Fultonevich a lot, and it's time for him to kind of take over that role from Tehran, in my opinion, and be that ace of the staff.
Yes, I completely agree. Moving on to the next team, this one pains me to talk about, honestly. I feel so bad for Marlins fans and everything that happened, trading away basically all their good players. It's tough. I hate to say it, but I really don't even think this team is going to win 60 games this year. And
Oof.
That's rough. But, the team just doesn't have everything there. I'd love to see them do something this year, and maybe Lewis Brinson is a guy you can definitely look out for. But the rest of the team, they have some decent guys. Derek Dietrich, Justin Bohr, who actually had a pretty solid season last year at first. I don't know. They're going to be interesting to watch because they're really going to be focusing with these young guys and a couple guys who've been around the block. They have Castro at second base now. But there's so much that they lost that it's so hard to make up. I mean, any team that loses Yelich and Stanton and Ozuna, I mean, you just lost major pieces that just set you back so far.
Yeah, the Marlins, no Stanton, no Ozuna, no Yelich, no Gordon. This team is depleted. It's bleak. I understand what you have to do in a rebuild. You go full rebuild. You build the prospects. I think that the hauls that they got for their guys were, I think they were destroyed by the media in the moves that they made.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's some talent in those deals they made that we'll see this next upcoming season. I think you'll see a lot of guys in those trades take the next step up. But even if I can't get behind this, I just can't get behind this fire sale because. Personally, I think that if you're going to do a sale of ownership and this ownership's coming in to buy the team, they need to be adding to the team, adding to the excitement. And it's not like this Marlins team won 50 games last year. This team is, in my opinion, they were just a couple pieces away from being legit playoff contenders. I mean, they had the best young outfield in baseball, period.
And
Ozuna, Stanton, and Yelich was the best outfield as far as young players go in baseball. They had talent all across the diamonds, and they were just like one Yu Darvish or or Jake Arrieta or one big name pitcher away from being right there in the thick of things for a wild card spot easily. And then, you hit on a diamond in the rough. You sign someone for a cheap deal, maybe like, an Andrew Kashner, who actually played for the Marlins, but you put someone like that in their rotation, and then they could be a legitimate playoff team. They were just a couple pieces away.
Yeah.
And I know it's not my money, and I can't just say that the owner should spend this money, but it's just disappointing to see a team that was right on the cusp of something great just fall completely down all the way to probably the worst team in baseball in one offseason. And personally, I can't help but think of what would have happened if Jose Fernandez was still there.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to think like that, so it's just, I feel really bad for Marlins fans. But
here's another reason to feel bad too. They raised their ticket prices. Raised them. Are you kidding me? You're going to raise your ticket prices after having that big of a fire sale? Are you kidding me? That is a slap in the face to Marlins fans, and it really sucks. I mean, they blew it all up when they were so close to maybe getting somewhere, and now they raise the prices with this team. I mean, it's embarrassing.
And they've gone this far, so you might as well trade Dietrich and Bohr now.
Yeah, get them out of there.
And Castro. I mean, you might as well just get as many prospects as you can, because you've taken it this far. You've committed to being the worst team in baseball, basically. I'd love to see some guys step up. I love Cameron Maybin. I hope that he can be a mentor for Lewis Brinson. And I hope that Lewis Brinson, since he's going to be the one prospect that they acquire that is ready to come up to that major league system and impact it, I hope that Lewis Brinson can step up and be in that Rookie of the Year category, because Brinson's a great talent. I like him, and he's a local guy for the Marlins. Yep. So, he is going to be the face of their franchise, they're hoping. And, we'll see how it goes. But there's just not much to like other than that about this Marlins team.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because the next team we're transitioning to is the complete polar opposite. We go to the Washington Nationals, who just seem like it's ready to be their year. They have to go all in. And, Bryce Harper's on a contract year, and I am really expecting a huge year from him. I mean, we're going to see numbers we may have never have seen for a contract. And the rest of the team is stacked. I mean, their pitching rotation is amazing. They have such a great just whole lineup, and I think this team really is going to run away with the East. The East, though, is easily the weakest out of any of the divisions, and this team's going to blow them away.
Yeah, there's so much to say about this Nationals team, but I'll just keep it simple. Their offense is elite. Their pitching is elite. And they are a team that it's their time.
Yeah.
Bryce Harper is most likely gone. I mean, in my opinion, I think that Bryce Harper, as you said, he's going to set a record contract. But I think that he's going to go elsewhere. I think that his time in Washington is done. It's not confirmed. He could very well end up re-signing in Washington. But you need to approach this season like it's your last season with Bryce Harper, and that means you need to go all out. And I still think that this team, given the way that the Dodgers are, given the way that the Cubs are, I still think that they're that one piece away, and we've heard rumblings that they're interested in Jake Arrieta. Well, there you go. If you want to make it, this go for it this year. If you want to make it that kind of season, then go out and sign Arrieta, throw him in a rotation with Scherzer and Strasburg and Gonzalez and Roark, and oh my gosh, suddenly we're talking best rotation in baseball, and we're just looking at the Nationals taking the next step. And honestly, Zimmerman had a big bounce back year. They signed Matt Adams this year to be a bench options for him, which is a great bench option. They still have Daniel Murphy. Trey Turner can play shortstop or the outfield. I love Trey Turner. Anthony Rendon is a super underrated player at third base. He's an elite third baseman, and he doesn't get talked about like he is. You have Adam Eaton, you have Bryce Harper, and then in center field, I like Michael Taylor, but watch out for Victor Robles, another big-time prospect coming up for the Nationals, and they didn't want to trade him in any of the talks that they had going on. They wanted to keep this kid, so they expect big things from him this year, and I think that he should get a lot of playing time this season. I think he'll end up taking over the center field role, and this Nationals team, on paper, this Nationals team should be a World Series contender.
Oh, yeah.
But every year it seems like they come up just a tad bit short. And it's like a Washington curse between them and the Capitals and hockey and the Wizards and basketball. I mean, and the Redskins.
Yeah.
The DC sports curse seems real. This year, Nationals fans will be praying that it's different, and they've got the team to do it, but it's just up to them to prove it at this point. I still expect them to win the East, though, and I expect them to be a big-time contender. But like I said, I just think that they're one piece away.
Yeah, absolutely. And one guy that obviously everyone should keep an eye on is Max Scherzer. I really think Scherzer has a great chance to challenge for the Cy Young this year. A battle between him and Clayton Kershaw is always fun to watch. They're both phenomenal. And Scherzer has just been so great throughout the years. This team is going to be fun to watch. They have some great guys. I love watching Adam Eaton. I mean, this team really is going to run away with the East, and they have a good chance to hit 105 and maybe 110 wins in such a poor division.
Yeah, that's very possible. But all right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Please leave a like and subscribe. And next time, join us as we make our predictions. We talked about all the teams. We talked about every division. And next time, we're going to make our predictions on not only what team is going to finish at the top of the division, but also we're going to go through the playoff series, and we're also going to go through the awards at the end of the season. So join us next time. Thanks for joining me, Josh, and we'll see you then.
All right.